Hello there, my beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of the Midlife Purpose Project. I have Jamie Cromer Grue on today, and this is Jamie's second appearance on my show. The first appearance was back when the show was called Mom on the Verge. I'm going to put the link to that episode in the show notes because I really feel like this is a two-part conversation that we just had a year apart. And it was sort of planned, but it was sort of intentional and sort of unintentional. When we put something out into the universe, we don't know when the timing is going to work out. But at the end of the first episode, I realized that there was a piece of the conversation we just didn't have time to get to. And I said, I should definitely have you back to talk about that. And then life goes on as it does. And I completely forgot until Jamie reached out to me about something else. And it came back to me that we really needed to have this second part of the conversation. So here it is, part two. So I highly encourage you to listen to part one as well. But you really can listen to them in any order. So you can start with this one. And then when you're done, just click on that link in the show notes and go back and listen to part one. I think it was episode 51. But Jamie is a board certified psychoanalyst. She's also a Chopra certified Ayurvedic health instructor. And she is really that beautiful combination that I personally love and feel really drawn to, which is that beautiful blend of East and West, of science and spirituality, of really making sense out of things on a logical level, but also really tapping into the wisdom of the soul and the body. And she runs retreats, which she has one coming up actually, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes. But she has plenty of other resources, many of which she is sending me links to, and I will include in the show notes to this episode. So please go check those out. I cannot make this retreat that she is hosting this time around, but I will definitely be going to one of her future retreats. They sound amazing. So check out all of that. But today, what we are talking about, this third piece of the conversation that we didn't get to have the first time around, is about dream interpretation. I personally have never had a lengthy conversation with anyone about dream interpretation. So this conversation just completely fascinated me. And I think it's going to fascinate you too. And it's just really evidence that there's something called the universal teacher in yoga philosophy, which basically means that there are teachers everywhere. I keep saying I'm going to do an episode on this, and I promise you I will. But the basis is that the teacher, which is the divine, God, universal intelligence, consciousness, whatever word you want to use, shows up everywhere. So it shows up through actual teachers. It can show up in podcasts you listen to, or shows you're watching, or people that you meet, or relationships that you have. It shows up obviously with your connection to your higher self, which we talk a lot about on this show. But here's another way: through your dreams. So your dreams are part of the universal teacher. It's part of consciousness trying to help you to understand yourself, get closer to yourself, remove the blocks that are preventing you from living your dharma, your soul's purpose, from feeling like your life has a lot of meaning, from providing the service that you were sent here to provide. And your dreams are just another way of receiving messages about what you need to know in order to do all of those things. So Jamie is going to really walk us through, why we have the dreams that we have, why we can't remember our dreams sometimes, what to do if we want to have a certain type of dream, or we want to have more pleasant dreams, or we want to connect with someone in a dream, or we want to resolve something in a dream, how we can go about doing that. And how to interpret our dreams. What is the process? How do we take what can seem completely jumbled and confusing and have no rhyme or reason, and actually pick it apart and start to find little bits of wisdom and little jewels of information that lead us home to ourselves. So please, please enjoy this episode. I hope you love it as much as I did. I want to remind you to sign up for my newsletter, my weekly mindfulness guide, midlife mindfulness guide. I really love my community over there. It comes out once a week, usually on Sundays, as long as I'm on task. And it's a great way to start your week. It's a road inward towards yourself. There's always something inspiring, always something to think about, and always a way to start, again, small ways, small tidbits on how to come back home to yourself. And then if you want the longer reads, if you want the more in-depth information, then find me over at Substack. That's katie.farinas. And if you have a Substack account, you just put me in the search bar and I will pop up and you'll get some of my longer, more in-depth content over there. All right, guys, have a great listen. Hey, gorgeous souls, and welcome to the Midlife Purpose Project. I'm your host, Katie Farinas, a yoga teacher and soul purpose coach. And just like you, I'm navigating the wild, beautiful, and sometimes messy terrain of midlife. This is the space where we unpack the shifts happening in our bodies, minds, and souls. We're diving deep into the questions that rise up when everything seems to be changing. Think of this as your toolkit for making sense of this powerful phase of life. We'll have honest conversations, belly laughs, maybe a few tears, and a whole lot of growth. We'll hear from experts on topics that matter to you in midlife, and I'll share yogic philosophy that has been helping humans live with more skill and ease for centuries. Because here's the truth. Everything you've been through, every challenge, every joy, every heartbreak, has been training you for this. You're not broken, you're not lost. You're stepping into your power. So come on in, embrace the mess, the beauty, and the absolute magic of midlife. Let's journey together. Hi, Jamie. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again. I love being here, having these conversations with you.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much for coming back on. In fact, in preparation for today's conversation, I went back and listened to our first conversation, which I will link in the show notes. It was episode 51. And now we're at about 120-ish. I forget exactly where I am. So a little while ago, it was called Mime on the Verge at that time. We've since changed our name, but the content is very much the same. And I think that everyone could benefit from listening to that episode. And we talked a lot about kind of uncovering ourselves, right? Uncovering the things that are subconscious, that are standing in our way from living the life that we want to live. And we talked a lot about meditation, and we talked a lot about journaling. And then there was the dream analysis part, and we just didn't have time to get to it. So I was like, Jamie has to come back. We have to talk about this.
I love it.
That's what we're talking about today. But for our listeners who didn't listen to that first episode, could you just give us a brief introduction on who you are and what you do?
Of course. Well, my name is Jamie Cromer Grue. I am a clinical social worker and psychoanalyst. And not only do I have my own patient load and help people navigate their own lives one-on-one, but I teach and I supervise. And years ago, I created a company called Windows to Wisdom, and was called to be able to try to share these resources and these ways of thinking about the self with as many people as possible. And so Windows to Wisdom is about doing the transformative inner work for women. Usually women who are going through challenges and transitions especially need these resources. And so we have all kinds of retreats and challenges and rituals that we offer and teach about. And you've mentioned some of the pillars of Windows to Wisdom. And that is the ways in which we can access our inner world or our unconscious mind. And I talk about the three pillars being meditation, free associative journaling, and the dream work, the dream analysis. So this is an important part of getting to know yourself and accessing your own inner wisdom so that you can take the steps and trust yourself and tap into what you need to listen to inside of yourself to guide you through life. So
I love
Yeah.
this. And as you know, we've had extensive conversation. I do a ton of inner work. And
Yes.
every time I think I've really tried everything, something else pops up. So dream analysis is something that I have not done. And as we were talking offline before we started recording, I mentioned I don't dream a lot that I am aware of. So
Right.
I have heard that everyone dreams every night. Is that true?
Well, I think there's this idea that we aren't tapped into knowing what's going on while we're sleeping. I mean, basically our dreams are designed to kind of keep us asleep, right? So that any of this energy or any of the stirrings of our soul and our emotions are kind of worked through in the dreams. And if it's all working just perfectly, you'll stay asleep. And many people don't remember their dreams. We do believe that most people are dreaming,
Okay.
and it usually happens during REM kind of sleep. And so, people who have deeper sleep, who have longer periods of REM, or having disrupted sleep, even because we tend to remember when we get interrupted inside of a dream. So,
Hmm.
those people tend to remember more. Also, there are some people who say things to themselves like, I don't dream. I
Hmm.
don't remember my dreams, right? And there
Right.
are people who value dreams and want to remember their dreams. And what we find is those people who are valuing it, want to remember, and are in the middle of their deep work, they will remember the dreams more. So, what was
Mm.
interesting to me is you said, I don't dream. And
Yeah.
yet, last night, the night before our meeting, you dreamt. So it's very
Yes.
interesting that your brain, your mind, your soul listened
Yeah.
to that and set that intention. So we talk about if you want to dream and if you want to remember your dream, part of that process is setting intentions in motion. And you set one anyway with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very interesting. And actually, when I listened back to our previous conversation, there was a part of it I had completely forgotten where I mentioned that I had had kind of a download during a yoga class, and it was a little confusing to me because it seemed to come out of nowhere. I didn't really know what it meant. And you said, set the intention to dream about it. And because I wanted to know more about it, I wanted to know why it came to me. And I did for many nights in a row, but I never got any more information about that download. And to this day, I still really don't know why that came to me. I trust that there was a reason and it will circle back in some way in some time, but
Yes.
I really never got it. And last night I didn't set the intention, although I did talk to my daughter because I said to her, I have this interview tomorrow.
Yes.
And you had emailed me and said, do you have any recurring dreams? And I said, I really don't dream that much. And my daughter dreams a ton. And so I was kind of picking her brain about her dreams. And so we were having the conversation. So I think just the conversation probably planted
Yes.
something in my
Yes.
subconscious. And yet, when I really tried the previous time around, nothing. I got nothing out of it. So I don't know
Well,
if
I
you
have a
have a
lot of,
thought about
I
that. Do you
do. I
want
have
to?
lots
Oh,
of thoughts. I mean,
okay.
you and
Tell
I can
me.
talk. Y'all, I teach whole courses on this. So we're gonna
Okay.
we're gonna be doing like the highlights. But this is what I'm
Okay.
gonna say. First of all, there's a reason sometimes that we don't know or don't hear what the messages are, and sometimes it's an unconscious resistance to knowing. And some people
Okay.
actually approach dreams and understanding themselves with some fear. What am I going to discover? What does
Hmm.
this really mean? And so when we find people fearful, that sometimes will affect. It's not always conscious. Sometimes it's unconscious.
Yeah.
And one thing about dreams is what we'll find in a dream is what we call the residue of the day. There's usually some residue of the day inside every dream. And so yesterday, you were talking about dreams.
Hmm.
You were setting intentions of what you wanted to talk about today. So even though you may not have sat down and said, I want to have a dream,
Yeah.
you were already stirring up these intentions of your dreams.
Yeah.
And the very process of like how to decode, how to do the dream analysis, those techniques can work for your download. They can work for
Mm.
daydreams. They can work for
Mm.
sexual fantasy. Um, so I feel like as long as you have these skills about how do I listen to myself, you can apply
Yeah.
it even after the fact to other things. Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. And so here's the other thing, and I keep bringing my daughter and I up because we're so different in this perspective. She is a visualizer. She has always very creative mind, lots of visualizing. Her dreams are crystal clear to her. She can tell you every detail of every dream the day after it happens. I am not a good visualizer. I am working on it. I'm definitely improving my skills, but it's more of an uphill climb for me
Yeah.
than for her. It's something that just comes so naturally to her. And so the other day, I had a visualization come to me about my future, um, years into the future. Like I was a grandmother in this visualization. I have no idea where this came from. It was crystal clear and it just boom, just like dropped in. And that's what it always feels like to me when I have a download is boom. It's like a heavy,
Yeah.
like it comes in and it's strong and it's clear. And so so what are the techniques then? Like if I want to
Yeah.
do that more, if I want to have that ability to access that more, what
Yeah.
do I do?
Well, I yeah, I'm going to answer that and then we can always backtrack on some of the other things. But I would say there's a technique called the dream bridge. Or sometimes I call it the dream window because we're windows to wisdom, and I'm always talking about the windows
Yeah,
into the self. But
yeah,
for you, the idea would be how do I get myself back into that visualization? Right. So, for example, I might say to you, imagine the download you had, or if we're talking to other people about their dreams, remember the dream or remember the download and try to put yourself back in there. Maybe even imagine walking over a bridge into that scene. Put yourself there. And then I would ask people to remember three things, remember three symbols, remember three aspects of it. And then just think, what does this mean to me right now? Like when I think about these symbols, when I touch into this visualization and I imagine these three things that were present, whatever they were,
okay,
then I can say to myself, what does this mean to me that I had this dream, this visualization, right? And so for you right now, we can do it. We could say,
okay,
what do you remember most about your visualization? What showed up?
okay. So the visualization, I was living in what I think was Colorado. I currently live in New Jersey. I lived on this property where I had a lot of property and I had a barn with a couple of horses. I recently started, I'm a beginner horseback rider. The last like 4 or 5 months I've been taking horseback riding lessons. So um, I had these horses that in the dream were my horses. I could see our home kind of in the background, not the home I currently live in, but the home we would be living in the future. It had a big front porch and rocking chairs and all that. And my daughter shows up with her two children, young children. And in the dream, or the visualization, I knew that she was coming from far away. Like I knew she didn't live down the street. Like they were coming from another
Mm-hmm.
state to visit. And I was teaching the kids how to ride the horse. Like I was putting them up on the horse and like allowing them to pet the horse and walk the horse around and like just getting them like familiar with the horse. And there were some other small aspects, but those are the things that really, really stand out to me.
Okay. So if we treat that literally like I had this dream last night and I was in Colorado, right? Like, so some of the major things that stood out to me were horses.
Hmm.
Maybe we could talk about your daughter coming from afar
Hmm.
and the existence of these two children that you're teaching,
Yeah.
right? So if we think about right now, what I would have you do is I would literally have you start to write. What does a horse mean to you? Why are the horses in this dream? Why Colorado? Or
Hmm.
why is she coming from afar? And what does it mean to you that you're teaching these kids
Yeah.
about riding? So
Yeah.
just imagine if you're writing. So I tell people to write because it's a way to free associate. We can have a conversation right now very similarly. You can just
Okay.
top of mind, just say whatever comes to mind. And I would tell
Okay.
people don't judge, be curious,
Yeah.
allow whatever comes up to come up without trying to censor it. Oh, that's silly or that's not important enough. Like these are really important concepts when you're doing the inner work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We don't want to dismiss anything because some of the things we think are like, I don't want to have that thought or that's silly or whatever, that actually shuts down our process of
Hmm.
really understanding ourselves. So
Yeah.
when you allow yourself to associate to these few things about your dream, your visualization,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about what's coming to mind.
So the horses, I think I've always had a love of horses and it's been something that I've wanted to do my whole life. And just because of really finances were the biggest barrier to doing that. And I finally got to a point in my life where I was like, forget it. Like, I'm going to die and never do this. Like, this is crazy. I've wanted to do this since I was a child. Like, now is the time. And so I just love them and I love being around them. And I've so enjoyed learning to ride them. I'm such a novice at it, but every single lesson I adore. And I can, I guess I can see myself in the future owning a horse or subletting a horse or having a horse in my life in some way because of the enjoyment that I get from just being around them, taking care of them, riding them.
Mhm.
My daughter coming from far away, like she's about to go off to college next year. I
Yes.
don't know where she's going to end up. So, and I'm not sure we're going to end up in the same place, because I want to end up where I want to end up. I've lived in a state my whole life that I didn't really want to live in, for various family reasons and such. And I definitely have a plan once my son, who's my youngest,
Yeah.
graduates college, to move to somewhere that I really want to be. And I love mountains. And my husband and I visited Colorado last year, and we both were like, "Oh my God, we love it here." So I have a feeling that's probably where that's coming from.
Yes.
The grandkids, it's very interesting because I don't think I've really ever thought about being a grandmother. I mean, my kids are so young. I'm still really in the thick of motherhood. So the idea of, and plus I do not want my daughter pregnant now, obviously.
Right.
So it's very interesting, but there was a sensation of like passing something on, like sharing something that's meaningful to me and maybe will be meaningful to them also, and being able to do it at a young age where I wish I would have been able to do that, but also with like a sense of connection, of being able to be connected to them. Oh, what's coming back to me now in the visualization also is that um they would come for like summers. Like my daughter would send them for the summer, and I would get to spend the
Mm,
summer with them, teaching them how to ride and that kind of thing. So it was kind of a multi-part visualization because on the one part, she was there and she was with them. And then the other part, they were just coming. Um, so
yes.
but it's just, again, fascinating. Like I was driving. I had this visualization while driving. I don't know where it came from.
Well, I'm excited about your download. Whether it's a daydream, a download, a visualization, a dream, all of it is a product of your internal world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be understood. So, briefly, before I say more, I'll just say if you think about just the animal of the horse, just a
Mhm.
horse itself, what would be a few words that you would use to describe horses from your perspective, your idea of what a horse is?
Hmm. I mean, I think when I'm around them, I feel very peaceful. So peace would be one of them. Um, Connection, because when you ride a horse, you really have to have that energetic connection. They're a very large animal. They're not going to listen to you unless you are energetically connected to them. Freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, freedom would
Yes.
be another one.
Yes. And that came to my mind. So
Yeah.
this kind of touches on this idea of like, what is a symbol and what does it mean?
Yeah.
And there are certainly books about dream symbols and symbols. We've always understood symbols as inherently having tons of meaning, whether it's in your culture or in a time period. And so you can always go look up a resource and kind of get the gist of what the universal is about a
Okay.
symbol. But I
Okay.
always tell people the most important associations are your own because my associations to a horse may be actually quite different than
Hmm.
yours.
Yeah.
And so it would mean something different in me. And so I always say that it's very important that you have your own associations first, and you can
Yeah.
always then check into the universal.
Right.
So, here, the other piece I would say is if this was a dream, we would also be talking about what the emotional overlay is. Like, what was the
Hmm.
emotion you felt while you were having this, or even as you're
Yeah.
talking about it now?
Yeah. Love and connection.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, it's what a beautiful dream, right? If you woke up and
Mhm.
said, I just had this wonderful
Yes.
dream, right? So, that tells us a lot about the spirit in which this is coming from you, love and connection and hopefulness and a sense of freedom. And I know
Hmm.
with your daughter going away, I would bet, being a mother myself, having just
Mhm.
sent two away, and the one thing I tell everybody I work with is we have a complicated set of feelings that are often knit together. Like it's it's multiple threads that weave this tapestry, right? So part of us might feel really sad to have our kids go away, worried about how they're going to be in the world, but also
Mhm.
maybe a little bit of relief and pride and gratitude. And like we have all these different feelings.
Yeah.
But for the most part, there's a sense of like she's going to go away, but she's going to come back. And we're going to meet in this new place that's rich with connection and love and peace
Yeah.
and freedom for you because you've been in a place
Mhm.
doing what you needed to do in a way that spoke to how you want to be a mother and a wife and all of
Mhm.
these maybe a sibling or a child, that
Mhm.
there's a reason you're where you're at, but there's a sense of like hopefulness and freedom. The other
Yeah.
thing I hear in your associations is about mastery. It's
Mm.
mastery, a mastery over a dream. You literally had a dream of a dream. Like, I've been wanting to go to this place. I want to have these horses in my life.
Mhm.
You're learning how to do it. And in your
Hmm.
dream, you've mastered it. In fact, you've
Yeah.
mastered it. You now own them and you can now teach other people how to do it. And that
Yeah.
may also, if I was working with you, I would say there's probably layers of that already happening in your life where you're gaining mastery and sharing
Mhm.
more with other people. I mean, you have this
Mhm.
podcast. So
Yeah.
there's no doubt that there are things you've incorporated into your life that you're trying to share with others.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the things I also think about. So the things we just talked about are all the ways that you would even understand a dream. And
Okay.
so there are a couple other things I would want people to know. One is I mentioned the residue of the day. When you have a dream, there's usually something that provoked it. It could be a feeling, it could be a person, it could be an event. In the dream, when people have the dream, I tell people to keep something near your bed to write it down because people
Mhm.
often do forget immediately.
Mhm.
And I often will actually just roll over and speak into my phone, in my notepad in my phone.
Mm.
But you can also type into your phone or write with your hand, having a
Yeah.
dream journal. And whatever you write down, the actual words that you write down initially are usually what we call manifest content. It is what's literally there. But then
Okay.
there's something called latent content. It's what's hidden. It's like the hidden meaning of like what is the hidden meaning of that place, that person, that symbol, right? And
Mhm.
so you would write it down and then you would do what I call the free associative journaling, like just what comes to mind. Why did you have this dream? What does it mean to you? What is the emotional content of it? And maybe pick two or three symbols out of it to really dive deep. Like, what does this
Okay.
mean to me? And then out of that, you're going to have a little piece of wisdom. Maybe you'll have a little breakthrough, a little aha. And even if you don't, you can say, okay, but what was the overall emotion and what does this mean about something that's going on in my life? Is there anything about this that's familiar to me in my life? And if not,
Okay.
you still say, my dreams will become more and more meaningful to me and over time, right? So you can come
Yeah.
back to it later. Um, and so I think those are probably the best guidelines. I will say this kind of bridge, this idea of the dream bridge I talked to you about. I would maybe encourage you to actually have a dialogue with either a person or one of the symbols in your dream or visualization. So for
Okay.
you, if I had you imagine being back in that place, I might say, what would it be like to have a conversation with the horse or a conversation even with your daughter in the
Mhm.
dream and say, what message do you have for me now?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's great because the visualization, I will say, was so potent and it felt so good that it does keep coming back, like and
Yeah.
easily coming back. And as I mentioned, I'm not really, visualization is definitely
Yeah.
not my strong suit, and yet
Yeah.
this is so crystal clear for me.
Yeah.
So I will try that. Yeah, I will
Yes.
try that.
Yes. Yes. And, a lot of people say they struggle with being, having visualizations very clear. And so I do a lot of guided meditations as well to guide people
Hmm.
into their unconscious mind. And one of the things I say is for some people, it's crystal clear, like you're describing, and like
Hmm.
what your daughter, it comes easily for your daughter.
Hmm.
And for other people, it's like, it's kind of fuzzy, or it may not be in color, it might be in black and white, or it's just kind of like a vague idea, or sometimes it's literally just like they can't see it, but they know it. They somehow
Yeah.
kind of know it, or they can sense it.
Yeah.
And I've also had people sort of like, even at one of the women's retreats last year, she literally said, I can't visualize, and here you're doing these guided meditations. I don't think I can do it. And I said, and I just encouraged her, I said, I want you to be open to the possibility that
Hmm.
it's going to shift for you. And in the meantime, I want you to imagine, rather than in pictures, if it were getting written down, or if you somehow heard it, or if somehow you just knew it. And
Hmm.
there was something very freeing about this. And not only was she able to make really good use of the visualization, she actually began to visualize. And this is
Oh,
someone,
that's
and
good.
she's somebody in her late 50s, and had been going to retreats forever, had been doing all kinds of meditation and yoga and everything, but she
Yeah.
really struggled. This was like a big roadblock for her. So
Yeah.
I will say is, I don't think you have to be a great visualizer,
Yeah.
but I also have noticed that it changes for people. It can change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when I say I'm not a great visualizer, I think it's lack of practice, quite honestly, because I am sure, in fact, I know I can actually remember back being a child and being able to be in my own world and have these like
Yes.
stories going on in my mind and visualizations. And somehow I lost that along the way in the response, you know, life and responsibilities and the
Yeah.
very left-brained world that we live in. And I really just I didn't tend to it. I didn't care for it, that
Yeah.
skill. And so I think the skill, like a muscle, right? If we don't work it out,
Mhm.
it gets weak. And I think my visualization muscle became weak. And now I
Yeah.
am putting in the reps again, and I can
Yes.
see it getting stronger. And I
Yes.
really encourage my kids, because my son also very, you know, and I don't know if it's related to creativity or not. Is visualization and creativity, are they linked?
I would think so, for
Okay,
sure. I
because
think
they're
so.
both super creative people, and
Yeah,
they
I think
both,
emotionally sensitive and creative people tend to have an
yes.
easier time, sort of being open to this kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I really try to like be like, don't, you know, don't shut that down. Like make that, you know, a priority that you continue working that muscle, because I think there's
Yeah.
just a tremendous value in it. I
Yes.
do have a question about, so I mentioned my daughter dreams all the time. I rarely dream, but for both of us, we never have pleasant dreams, okay? Her dream, she's like, there's always something bad going on in my dream. And really, it's not like I'm dreaming of rainbows and butterflies and like the world is beautiful and perfect, you know? And we mentioned it before we started recording, I really only have two types of dreams. And they're basically the same dream, but different things happen, but it's the same flavor, which either my husband is dying or cheating on me. And he's an amazing, wonderful, loving, kind husband who is amazing. So we can maybe talk about that. So, but also, why do we have only bad dreams? Like, are there people out there who actually are having lovely, beautiful dreams? And how do I
Okay.
do that?
So much, so much, so much. Okay. So the first thing I'll say is I don't think I don't think the two things you just brought up are unrelated. So what I mean by that is you're wondering if you lost touch with that side of yourself, because you got sort of busy in your left brain. And that might be so. But what we also know that is, when we're having dreams, if they're not fun, if they're not pleasant, if we're scared about what we're going to think or dream, we might want to shut it down and close that door and not go visit that side of the house, right?
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think of it as like, yes, I agree with you. I do think that when we set an intention and we practice it, we're going to get better. But
Hmm.
I also think there's this acknowledgement of like, maybe I didn't want to go there.
Hmm.
And what you're saying is, this wasn't pleasant for me. Why would I want to remember my dreams if every time I'm remembering my dream, it's uncomfortable? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of the kind of resistance that can happen. Yes, people have pleasant dreams. We tend to, as humans, remember bad things, crystallize and intensely feel the negative because of the way it sort of just lays itself in our brain.
Hmm.
Um, in the brain, our limbic system, while we're dreaming, is really activated. And that's the amygdala and the hippocampus. So it's touching in on memory and intense emotion. We also know from a psychoanalytic perspective is that quite often our internal conflicts, the things we're kind of wrestling with inside of ourselves, not, I mean, there's kind of a big joke about psychoanalysis is like all about sex, which is actually not true at all. But our aggressive parts of ourselves, our sexual parts of ourselves, are usually the parts we tend to want to keep hidden in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they can have a stronger valence of wanting to show up and cause us the most anxiety. And, if we tend to wake up from our dreams, it's usually the ones that are not very good that are going to provoke that experience. Okay. So, in a way, it's not maybe that you're never having something pleasant or just kind of like, you're boring regular, like I went into the grocery store and it was filled with lots of choices and I, found myself wandering down the aisle. And then, this kind of one of these weird dreams that wasn't necessarily bad or good. It was just there. There's still plenty of there's plenty of stuff in there to understand still.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks to this idea of people tending to remember the dreams that wake them up or cause them distress.
Okay.
Okay, so that's kind of a general idea of that. In terms of like for you, okay, it's two things I want to say. I do think there's a reason we have the dreams we have. And we might want to say, well, what's the theme here? So if we talk about your theme, it's the theme of some kind of loss and or betrayal. And so the question might be, if we traveled back in time, with your permission, I will invite you to do this, is if you traveled back in time, does it make sense to you that one of your primary worries, forget your husband for a minute, because it's not about him. Not necessarily. There might be some things that go on that you dismiss, and I'm not saying he's having an affair. I don't mean that. But if we go back to the past, does it make sense to you that one of the preoccupations might be that you're afraid either of a loss or a betrayal of some kind?
I have never, I think it would, so I have never experienced what I would consider in my very conscious brain a significant loss or betrayal. But what's coming to me, and I don't know if this is the answer or not, is the loss and betrayal of myself from myself for many years. So I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's the one that's
I want
coming.
you to trust this. Okay. This is something really important in all the work I do. And it's sort of what I said earlier when I say, don't dismiss, dismiss. Because some people are like, I don't want to have that thought. I don't want that image. I don't want to think that's silly or that's not right. I actually think what we always have to trust is that your association is the right one. There may be other things. There may be some things that are a little out of view right now that with us continuing to talk or journey, you'd be like, oh, actually, this comes to my mind too. And it may not be about somebody cheating, right? So it's just about allowing this idea. But the fact that you thought that, I will talk to you about that, because if indeed you were betraying and denying parts of yourself, if you were not taking good care of yourself, then one of the things we will sometimes do as humans is we defend against either that knowledge or the anxiety or the pain of whatever the circumstances, and we tend to defend against it. And one thing you can do when you're defending is project. Right. So in the dream, he's the one that's betraying. When actually it's you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that doesn't surprise me at all. Like this version of things could easily be why. And so so if that's true, like if we were talking about making good use of dream work, at the end of this, when you find out whatever the little nuggets are, in this case, if we were analyzing that dream of him cheating on you, for example, and you came to realize like somehow I'm turning this into him, but what if that's a part of myself? What if, because I mean, another way to think about dreams, there's so many different ways to think about dreams, but one is that you represent every symbol and every person in that dream. And if we, for a moment, really allow you to think of yourself as both yourself and him in the dream, then you could say, how am I betraying myself? And if I have this knowledge, then maybe the solution to not having that particular dream over and over again is to not betray yourself anymore, to
Yeah.
not abandon yourself anymore. So one of the things I've noticed in the when I work one-on-one with people, I have a longer time to track over time the kinds of dreams they bring in. This
Okay.
also happens in the themes of what they're talking about, right? Like
Yeah.
someone may come in talking about something and then it evolves and evolves. And
Yeah.
it's not just evolving this way, sometimes it's literally going deeper and deeper, right?
Yeah.
And so, one thing I have noticed over the course of work is that people's dreams change. Their daydreams can change, their sexual
Yeah.
fantasies change. And what they do is they change usually when there's internal change.
Yeah. Okay. So this is fascinating. So I wasn't going to share this part of the dream, but now I have to. Last night's variation was that my husband cheated on me. Okay. The dreams are again never it's just a variation on that theme. What actually happens in the dream, besides the cheating or the dying, is never the same. But so I was in my childhood home, which I think is significant, and my husband and I were in a throuple, which I'm not throwing any shade, is just not what we do. Okay. We're like a very vanilla, plain Jane heterosexual couple. Okay. So that in itself was like really weird. And he left me for the other woman in the throuple, which I'm now thinking I was both women and both of the women, right? So he like left an old version of me for a new version of me, or left the new version of me for the old version of me. I'm not really sure, but that's fascinating because I woke up and I was like, what the heck was that?
Um, yeah, I love that you shared that because, quite often the things people want to hide in, and I mentioned this earlier, are anything related to sex and or aggression. Like
Right.
people don't really want to talk about it. Usually it feels too revealing or too vulnerable or something. So I will
Yeah.
say, good for you to have the courage to be like, I had this dream.
Yeah.
And also not necessarily attached to it, like this is some truth or this must mean something about me. Because by the
Yeah.
way, some people who might have that dream, it may provoke some anxiety about, is there something that I'm wanting I'm not getting, or what does this mean about my own sexuality, or what is this really telling me about my marriage? And I mean, those are good questions. It's really good to be able to ask yourself all those questions and feel free to answer
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, he is leaving. So I will say this to you. If I were working one-on-one with you, I would say, is it possible that there's some place in your life where you are still holding on to some insecurity? And I don't know where that would be, but maybe
Yeah.
there's something that, even though he's not doing that, maybe just the idea of if it were to happen feels so painful and so hard, and it stirs some kind of insecurity, that it disrupts a sense of stability, or maybe it disrupts that sense of peace. It's
Yeah.
almost like a fear of loss, like not that it's
Right.
happening, but like that would almost like that would be the worst thing, right? Like
Yeah.
the worst case scenario is that this life would get disrupted.
Yeah. And I can relate to that. I really can, because with my continued evolution, as I change, of course, that changes our dynamic. And there is always a concern that the relationship will not survive the change. And yet there's always the knowing that I can't stop the change. Like I'm on a runaway train and it's not stopping. So how is that going to impact our relationship? So I've already, like on a conscious level, had that thought.
So this is
Um,
actually it. This is part of it, right? Because you're conscious and then your unconscious is like, I'm really not so sure. Like, but, and then what he would do in order to manage his own threat of you changing. Like, I will tell you, this is so common. So I'm really glad you're putting words to this. My guess is there are women who listen to you who
mhm,
have this fear of like, if I change, if I go to therapy and I work on myself, or if I
mhm,
if I become a healer, if I start going down this soul path, can
mhm.
he come with me? Can my
Yeah.
partner come with me, whoever they are? Can they grow with me? And this
Yeah.
is a big, big fear. And I remember having the same exact fear as I was going through my own training to become a psychoanalyst, going through my own psychoanalysis, which is required. And
Hmm.
this idea, like, what's going to happen if he can't grow with me? Because we've been together 30 something years, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful that in
Hmm.
fact it's all okay. But I do remember having that fear as well.
Yeah. So maybe that's what it's about. And it is a really significant fear that anyone who is on the path, and I think most women who are listening to this podcast are on their own internal
Yes.
journey, or they really wouldn't be here listening to me. It's something that holds you back. Like you feel like I want to go here, but if I do, then what? And it's scary, very
Yeah.
scary. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But then you have the visualization.
Then I have the visualization. Yes. And by the
Right.
way, he was in the visualization. He was not like he was kind of off on the porch, like he wasn't with the horse with me, but he was there, as well as my daughter's husband who didn't have a face. So I don't know who that was. But
Yeah, he's there.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
there. And so
yeah.
there's this hopeful future. And I do think that when we're doing the work, when whatever we're doing, whatever challenge we're facing, that a part about being resilient is being able to be mindful about where our mind goes,
Yeah.
right? So I do think, as much as I'm into like tapping into our inner world and our unconscious mind, I do believe when we take time to feel gratitude, when we take time to imagine the best and not just the worst,
Hmm.
right? Because,
Hmm.
our minds can go in any direction.
Yeah.
How helpful that is. And for you, it wasn't that you planned to have the best case scenario dream of
Hmm.
your future, but
Hmm.
women who are listening to this now absolutely can. You
That's
can
what I was
set,
going to ask you. Yeah. So,
yes,
so do you set the intention, like I want to have a pleasant dream, or I want to
yes,
dream about my future? Or how do you set the intention and kind of, set the
yeah,
stage for having
yeah.
that kind of
A
dream?
good question. So in that moment, I was specifically also thinking about a guided meditation that I do, talking about meeting your future self and the evolution of your future. And so whether you listen to mine or you just set the intention, you can literally be like, I want to have a vision right now of what I want in my future and just allow it to happen, right? Sort of like you got the download. People can literally just sit back, close their eyes, and say, I want to have a pleasant daydream about my future, right? And allow it. But in terms of dreaming, similarly, if you set an intention, I'm going to have a meaningful dream, or even I'm going to have a pleasant dream,
Hmm.
um, you can even ask to solve a specific question.
Mm.
Whether people do that in I have some guided meditations about sort of doing like an inner compass journey where you go in and ask a specific question and get some answers. Um, just like I suggested, you could go into your visualization and have a conversation with anyone or anything in your dream, like with the
Yeah.
horse, with your daughter. So you can do that very consciously before you go to bed and say, I'm going to have a meaningful dream, or I want to have a dream with this, or I'm having this issue in my life and I would like to have some piece of wisdom downloaded to me to help me know about my decision or whatever.
Yeah.
I do have a dream set of resources, and one of them is actually a meditation you listen to before bed. I think it's helpful, but you don't need it. Like you literally could just go to bed, lay your head down, take a few deep breaths, and just tell yourself. And
Yeah.
have whatever you have nearby to write down your dream right away,
Okay.
um, and document it as best as you can without trying to revise it, because you can always do the kind of writing it down later. Like, what do I think about it? Just try to get as
Right.
much downloaded.
Yeah.
Um, a minute ago, when you were telling me about your dream, as we were talking, you said, oh, I remember this part. Or maybe it was actually about the actual visualization. But either way, it was almost like as you were talking, you're like, oh, yeah, now I remember this other part.
Mm.
That also happens when you make time for reflection,
Yeah.
right? So it's like
Hmm.
giving ourselves permission to make the time to understand what we've already downloaded. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people, even when they remember their dreams, they're like, I had that weird dream, and they don't even
Yeah.
think about it again.
Yeah.
And it's like all this gold that needs to be mined.
Yes. And that's
Yeah.
me. I mean, for my pretty much my entire life, I've been like, that's weird. Off I go. I'm done. That was the extent of my
Yeah.
analysis. That's weird. Because they are always wacky. I mean, they appear to be so wacky. So I love that. Just taking the time to, yes, to just like
Yes.
put down the facts, nothing but the facts, and then go
Yes.
back and revisit that and see what meaning you can make out of it.
Yes.
And especially if
Yes.
it's recurring, because obviously it's there, it's repeatedly coming to tell you
Yes,
something.
it's telling you something. So, what is it trying to tell you? So, in
Yeah.
that way, even in the dream, you might even imagine having a conversation with the husband that's in the dream. Why are you leaving? What are you trying to
Okay.
tell me you need? What do you need from me? Or
Yeah.
what's the message? Yeah.
Can you have a dream? Can you set the intention and does it work to actually have the dream again and go like deeper into the dream?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. So many, many years ago, in fact, when I was in my training, and very working with my very first patients when I was in an internship, I had a mentor talk to me about working with nightmares.
Hmm.
And she recommended that people go back in and go back in with a plan. So if whatever the nightmare is, you get to go in and have a different ending.
Okay.
So if there's somebody scary, how do you make them not scary? Do you shrink them up into the size of like Tom Thumb?
Right.
Or do you find a way to encase them in plastic? Do you get away? Do you run away? Do you disappear them with a magic wand? Like you get to actually create whatever you need to create to make that scary situation different. And so you can
Okay.
literally decide, I'm going back in and I'm handling this, right?
Wow.
So you can set intentions also, and you can
Yeah.
practice it. So let's say people have a recurrent nightmare and they hate it because they're being chased or they're being shot or something like that.
Hmm.
You could literally have, I do think it means something, right?
Hmm.
Something's trying to catch up with you. You are feeling hurt. There's potentially a trauma that's revisiting. There's a lot of
Hmm.
reasons for that. And I do think therapy sometimes is actually helpful in trying to unlock some of the healing potential of your dreams and to heal whatever needs to be healed. But
Yeah.
I needed to say that. But I also feel like you can practice, like,
Hmm.
what do I need to do to take the situation and do something different? And that can be very empowering. And even though it's happening in this like almost like the movie, the metaphor is I
Yeah.
can stand up for myself, I can be creative and have solutions. I no longer have to be a victim to this. I have the tools and techniques to fix this situation. Like, whatever way you can think about it, even metaphorically, it's like that's what you're doing when you say,
Okay.
I'm going back in to repair this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. And can you intend also to have a conversation?
Yes.
Okay. So let's
Everything's
say
possible.
everything's possible. Because do
Anything's
you
possible.
believe that we can connect with our past loved ones through dreams?
Yes, I think some
Okay.
people do. So I'm a very spiritual person. I don't think everybody believes that there is another plane or something in an afterlife.
Yeah.
I absolutely do.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think people do have visitations from people. And I
Yeah.
remember my mother-in-law died, and the night before her memorial, she came to me in a dream.
Mm.
And in the dream, and I ended up, it was very, she was a poet. And one of the things that happened, the soundtrack in the dream was a Rolling Stones song. And that's going on in the background. She and I are having this conversation. I wake up and I download this poem, and I ended up reading it at her memorial. And I
Oh
really
my
believe it's
gosh.
because
Wow.
she came and she was very happy in the dream. She was
Yeah, that's
dancing.
nice.
So it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Whether you want to say that was truly her spiritual self visiting with this message or not, I don't think it actually even matters,
Hmm.
really.
Yeah.
But I do believe that people talk about being visited by loved ones. And
Yeah.
after people die, it's actually not unusual to have them sort of
Yeah.
not only show up in your dreams, by the way, but pop up into your mind or to even think you see them, right? And
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
that's a true vision or not, or just like everybody who has that body build, I'm thinking it's them, right?
Right.
So this is also all different versions of how we manage grief and
Right.
loss. But I do think there is research about this, and people have written about loved ones who have died coming into the dreams.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I know my mom, when her father passed, she had a very vivid dream my grandfather, her father, came in the dream, and it gave her a tremendous sense of peace, and
Yeah.
she really felt like she had connected with him.
Yes.
But I'm just wondering if you can almost like do it, not do it on command, but you know what I'm saying, like set the intention, like, oh, I want to have more contact with this loved one. I'm going to
Yeah.
set the intention for them to come to me in my dream.
Yeah.
If you've ever
Why
had,
not?
yeah,
That's the only thing
right,
I would say is why not?
yeah,
But because I think there is something very powerful about what we do invite, right? So when we
hmm,
talk to people and they're inviting, if you hear about the way they talk to themselves or the way they talk about their life, that it's very important to know that we can be inviting a certain pattern of thinking and connections in our life if we just stay spinning on the same story, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I'm not somebody who says we should bypass all of our thoughts and plant, I am known to be, I'm an optimist, by the way. I am going to probably put a positive spin on a lot of things. But I also believe we have to like honor where we're at, even if it's messy,
yeah,
even if it's ugly or painful. But we can be mindful about, we can set positive intention, and we
yeah,
can set positive intention in the dream to both understand something, but also to dream something beautiful and
yeah.
hopeful. Yeah.
And do you believe that any dream that we wake up and we can remember, there's a reason for that? Like every dream has something that you can learn from it.
That's my belief. I'm also a psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
And I believe in the power of internal messages and
Yeah.
connecting to the inner self. So of course I wouldn't want to silence any voice or any message.
Yeah.
And I believe that, we talked about those three pillars, that when we're journaling and we're just letting ourselves journal, even in an open way, like what do I most need to know right now?
Hmm.
If we're open to whatever gets delivered and we accept it with curiosity and judgment, there's always going to be a nugget of wisdom,
Yeah.
whether it's through that or even meditation. People who meditate, there's all different ways
Hmm.
to meditate, right? You have
Hmm.
guided meditations, you're going to discover beautiful things. You're going to
Hmm.
find your symbol of strength. You're going to have a good conversation with your inner wise one. You can do all that.
Yeah.
But even when you try to clear your mind, you have a mantra meditation. For me, I have downloads. They're
Hmm.
creative downloads, they're messages, it's inner
Yeah.
wisdom. Like, so there's all these different like windows to the self, windows to the unconscious that you can open.
Yeah.
And dream interpretation is one of them. And so, yes, I think every
Yeah.
dream potentially holds a
That's
nugget of wisdom for you. Yeah.
okay. Because we mentioned before we started rolling that the audience knows that I have chronic migraine, and I have these insanely wacky dreams when I have a bad migraine. They literally, I cannot make any sense out of them. They just seem just confusing, quite honestly. They're totally confused. There's no storyline, there's nothing you can follow. They're just kind of all over the place. So I always wondered if that's just a manifestation of my physiology, of like what's going on in my neurological system when
Yeah.
it's under attack by a migraine.
Well, it would be interesting to hear what that is, but I guess what I would say is there is something called primary process, and the unconscious mind is primary process, which means really it's actually not logical. It doesn't have a sense of time. It's not in logic. We try to make logic out of it, and sometimes
Hmm.
there is a storyline, but the fact that you don't have one is actually beautiful. And if you just dump it out, like dump it out on the
Yeah.
page, and you take this idea of like, what are the symbols here? Where are some of the little nuggets, the tiny nuggets? I don't need
Yeah.
to try to paint a story, and just let yourself try to understand little pieces of it. It still might manifest as something important. If it's born out of pain, it's possible that this is part of how you're trying to resolve pain potentially,
Mm.
but it
Hmm.
also but it also just might mean that you're remembering because you're in pain and you're waking
Mm.
up in pain, and so you're remembering your primary process, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't necessarily say we can say this is just because. We do
Yeah.
know that some people dream more with certain medications,
Hmm.
right? So we do know that the brain can be impacted by substances, by other internal processes
Yeah.
that make it more, that you have more access to information. So I would think of it
Mm.
as more like that. Or
Mm.
maybe, or
Okay.
maybe the way we could think about it too. I don't know why I'm thinking about it this way, but if we think about water, And that water, if it's filtered through a tea bag, gives us beautiful green or pomegranate tea.
Hmm.
If it's filtered through our French roast, it gives us coffee. So
Right.
maybe we think about there's a filter happening. Your pain is going through this filter, and something's coming out. If
Yeah.
you were in another state of mind, maybe something else would come out, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's not useful. And so
Okay.
if you just kind of be curious, you know,
Yeah. All right.
yeah.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do You're gonna get emails from me, girl.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
hope so.
This
I
is fascinating. Okay, I have one last question.
Yes.
So I'm asking my daughter yesterday, I'm like, do you ever have recurring dreams? And hers are always, pretty wild as well. But she said the one thing that's been going on since she was a small child, and it's this character, it's a vampire, shows up in her dreams. But and it's been the same since she was young until now, but it has evolved in the sense that when she was young, the vampire was very scary. Now, I will preface it by saying the vampires never try to attack her or harm her in any way. She describes him as lurking in the dream, and he shows up in it's all different dreams. This
Yeah.
vampire just keeps showing up. But now the vampire is no longer scary. So it's still there, but she doesn't like feel afraid of it in any way, and it's still doing its lurking. So its role kind of has evolved over time. So I'm assuming we're looking at the vampire as a symbol, and that this symbol must mean something, but the meaning of that symbol has now changed over time. Am I correct in that?
Yes, absolutely. So what I would say is maybe maybe part of her healing is to understand the one question might be why the vampire. And so if we think about the vampire as just a symbol itself, then we might say allowing her to describe the qualities of a vampire. Um, it's a physical representation of something, but it would mean something different for everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it may be that she was exposed to this image in some way, and that stuck, right?
Yeah.
It could have been Halloween and she saw something and it scared her as a little girl and it got planted. So we don't know exactly, though she may know
Right.
the original, but vampires mean something emotionally as well, right?
Okay. Hmm.
It
Yeah.
takes energy from you, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think for her, like allowing her to associate to the vampire, what does it mean? And right now, we could even invite her, if it's not so scary, to ask, why are you here?
Mm.
What is it that you need? Is there something that you need in order to be able to go away?
Yeah. So those questions remind me of like internal family systems. Like
Yes.
so a symbol could be like a part of you that
Yes.
that it needs attention.
Yes. Absolutely. Remember, we said earlier, you can be all the parts in your dream,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't do that blanket. Like there's not like it's always you, but think
Right.
about it as layers of meaning. Like it could be the
Yeah.
real person. It could be how you associate to the real person. It could be a part of you. So I
Okay.
would think of it as, is this a part of herself?
Okay.
Is there somebody in her life that has symbolized some aspect of this that's felt difficult? Um, is it just the residue of a traumatic vision of something, and now
Yeah.
anything that's kind of scary is kind of comes in the form of the vampire?
Yeah.
So if we think about, vampire may not always be the same thing, but maybe it's symbolic of what is lurking in her mind or what is feeling threatening in the moment. In other words, anything can be the vampire, right? It
Right.
may not
Right.
even be. It's almost like it's its own repository, like something you put something inside of, like,
Okay.
oh, that's the vampire. It means that something's lurking in my mind at the time.
Okay.
That would be an
Yeah.
example. So I
Yeah.
think there's different ways for her to think about it, but absolutely, I do think it's certainly a good sign that over time, it's gone from being really scary to not. And I would say if she even thinks about her own emotional life, her
Mhm.
mental health, or over a period of time, if she's done some healing, I would say this might be one way it's manifesting and
Yeah.
showing her healing
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. She's done a lot of healing.
That Okay, that doesn't surprise me, because remember I
Yeah.
told you we can sometimes see that in dreams. And so
Yeah.
this is such a good sign. But it
Yeah.
also might mean now, because it's not as scary, she can actually discover something else. Like, what is the
Yeah.
little piece of wisdom left for her? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to tell her this. I'm going to
Good.
see what she thinks. She did say last night, which so she's a highly sensitive person. Both of my children are. My husband is a strong personality, and I think she was afraid of him when she was little, because of her high degree of sensitivity. And she did say, I think it was Papa. They call him Papa. I think it was Papa. And I think I was afraid of him when he was young because he was loud and he,
Yeah.
when he got
Yes.
upset, all those types of things, and her being so sensitive. And now she, is much more comfortable and
Yeah.
is not afraid of him anymore. But
Yes. So the
also,
answer is yes.
the answer is yeah,
But
right?
does it also represent the parts of her personality, right?
Right.
Where she scares herself
Yeah.
or something is lurking and bothering her.
Right. Right.
So I do think there's room to think about it in those ways as well.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So I like the idea of the repository that's kind of a symbol, for many different things that could be showing up in your life, not
exactly.
necessarily just one thing.
Right.
Yeah,
So let's say one day she doesn't have a lurking vampire anymore, really. But then 10 years from now, he shows up.
yeah,
Right. It
yeah,
might be like, ooh, what's going on in my life right now where I feel like that something's tugging at me, right? Like, so
yeah.
that's an example of how we can make use of our own inner wisdom. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. This is fantastic. So we
Good.
want people to set the intention, right, for what
Yes.
they want to dream about, whether it be
Yes.
having a good dream or going
Yes.
deeper into a dream or almost solving a problem in a dream. Write down immediately what you
Yes.
dream, then later go back, read it, journal on it to try to
Yes.
interpret what's going on there.
Yes.
Anything else? Am I missing anything?
I don't think so, but I am going to I'll send you a link to the dream resources so that if people want to have even just the little PDF that guides them through it, or if they want to learn more about it, or they want the intention, like all these are free resources. So
Okay.
I can give you a connection,
That's
but I
amazing.
can't think of anything else that, except, in terms of setting the intention, I would say, if you're going to just guide yourself through it, essentially when you go to bed, I want you to kind of scan your body, release any tension in your body, start to quiet your mind and your body, and then set those intentions. I will remember my dreams with ease. I welcome my dreams. I'm ready to see what I need to see, right? I
Hmm.
trust the dreaming process. So these are some of the intentions where you're just
Okay.
sort of, I'm welcoming this in, and just feeling confident that you're going to make sense of it as you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of reminds me of something we talked about on the previous episode, which is we were talking about, why people are sometimes resistant to the internal work, to meditation and journaling, et
Yes.
cetera,
Yes.
and how
Yes.
they're afraid, sometimes afraid of what they're going to find out and
That's
what that's
right.
going to mean for their lives. And so I'm assuming the dreaming would be the same.
Yes.
And you mentioned in that episode about like setting the stage for safety. So like thinking of
Yes.
something that makes them feel safe, a location
Yes.
or
Yes.
a symbol, or doing, I think you said start it with gratitude journaling as an
Yes.
entry point into journaling. So if we're setting the stage for wanting to have dreams and remember them so that we can get information from them, how do we set that safety stage as well?
Yeah. So I think part of this is like, where are you in general on feeling safe, safe in your own skin, safe to know your own mind?
Hmm.
So some of the things that can help establish safety are grounding in the moment, grounding, um, being able to relax, telling yourself that I will only dream and know what I'm ready to dream and know.
Hmm.
If you were really kind of afraid, you could say that, like, I'm ready to accept in what I know that I can handle. But
Hmm.
I also think that I feel like our minds do that anyway. Like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reason we have defenses is we can protect ourselves from
Yeah.
knowing.
Yeah.
You mentioned the symbol of strength, and we can call upon that.
Hmm.
But I feel like, if I was working with someone who was just really afraid, I would probably want to reassure them, about the pacing and allowing as things, and just inviting what's ready to come up. But
Okay.
I also would want to work with that person to develop self trust, security, safety. So if
Yeah.
that's really the first thing people are thinking when they hear this, then
Yeah.
that's a sign that they need to do some of that work, Like, it's
Okay.
okay to be afraid, but let's get to the bottom. Like, what are you actually afraid of?
Yeah.
And so I would even encourage people to dream, to journal. What is it that I'm most afraid of? So you can
Hmm.
look at it, because sometimes things that are scary, like if we say something's under the bed, that's really scary. If we lift it up and we look under, we go, oh, it's just that box I put under there.
Right, right,
So,
right.
so sometimes the unknown feels really scary. And it's really
Yeah,
like, you're not usually going to discover things you don't kind of already know. As
yeah,
people are often afraid of finding something really terrible. And it's like, well, that happens occasionally, but more often than not,
yeah.
we already we already know, or we kind of know anyway.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, great. That's a great answer. And if whoever hasn't listened to the previous episode, I really highly encourage you guys to go back and listen to it. We talk extensively about what a psychoanalyst was in that episode because I
Yes.
did not know what it was. And so the themes are very much overlapping. So I would consider that like episode 52, part one, and this is part two.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
And what else do you have going on? You have a retreat coming up,
I
correct?
do. I do. So I have a retreat in November, beginning of November, at Paloma Lake in Louisiana, which is just about 40 minutes outside of New Orleans. We had our retreat there last year. It's a women's retreat. It's almost full. I
Mm,
do have like maybe one space maybe available in one of the lake houses, and I have these really cute little A-frame cabins that are right by
oh,
the lake. So we have a couple of cabins left. So it's almost full. But this is a gathering of women where we spend 3 days going through transformational, experiential kind of rituals and
yeah,
meditations, and just having time to witness each other in the process. A time to put away your phones, get away from your daily life, and just make time to do the work we're talking about. Because, right, people are like, we're so busy. I don't have time
yeah,
to sit around and think about my dreams. And it's like, well, we make time. So
yeah.
that retreat is coming up. I have a retreat program where it's a gift box that you get in the mail, and you get to have your own retreat at home or with your
Mm-hmm.
friends. So that's getting launched again. We launched that last year, but it's coming up again, I think in October.
Okay.
And there's always something. We have a resource of guided meditations and all the things I mentioned today, and challenges and PDFs, all inside of an app, for Windows to Wisdom. And that's accessible also, I think, through most platforms, Google and Apple. And
Oh, great. I didn't know that you had the app. Okay. So they can
yes,
just go to their app store and download it. It's just
you
called Windows to
can.
Wisdom.
Windows to Wisdom. And there's
Yeah.
also, when you go to the website, the Windows to Wisdom website, it's actually on there as well. And so
Okay.
people can also get to that portal and really search. The one thing you can do online on your laptop that you don't as easily get to do on the app is actually really convenient. And once you start watching something, it's in your portal. But to do it like a broad search, if you're on the laptop, you can search the app better.
Okay.
So lots of good resources. I've
Yeah.
really appreciated having time to talk to you today. I'm glad that you called me and that we got to talk
Yes.
about dreams. I love to talk
Me
about
too.
dreams. And
Me too.
yeah,
Me too. Thank you so much for being here. This was so fun and so
good.
enlightening. And I'm going to make one of your retreats one of these days.
I would love that
That
so
is
much, Katie. I would love that.
100% on my plan.
I
So,
would love that.
thank you so much again,
You're so
Jamie.
welcome.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Jamie is fantastic. I really found it so fascinating, all the things she was able to pick out of the examples that I was giving. You guys really got a really a good look into my psyche during this episode. I hope it didn't scare you away. But I think that it was great that we had those concrete examples because you can bring it back into your own life and your own dreams and it makes it crystal clear on how to do the practice of breaking down a dream and trying to understand what it's trying to tell you. I for one will certainly be taking Jamie's advice on two things. One, setting an intention to not only dream but to remember my dreams, and then writing them down and journaling on them because I think that dreams have a ton to teach us. So I'm super interested in what my dreams have to tell me. As you all know, I have suffered from chronic migraine for the past 12 years. I've never been able to find an answer to my chronic migraine. So I'm always looking for new ways of figuring out what's going on. Is if it's not a physical issue, which there's been no evidence that we can find of a physical problem, then is it an energetic problem? Is it a psychological problem? Where are these migraines coming from? Is there something blocked that's trying to get through? And I've had various other people say that usually when they get migraines, it means that something's trying to come through. So I have not been able to determine what that is, what's been trying to come through. So maybe my dreams are a way of doing that. So I'm going to give it a shot. If you give it a shot, let me know. I want to hear all about it. And I would love to connect with you. Okay, check out those show notes for episode 51. That's Jamie's first episode, my Substack newsletter, and of course, Jamie's retreat sign up. I think she said it ends in October. So definitely click on that link and see if you can grab yourself a spot. Have a wonderful week, my beautiful friends. Namaste. Thank you for joining me on this journey of self-discovery here at the Midlife Purpose Project. I hope today's conversation sparked something deep inside of you, made you laugh, or reminded you that you are never alone. Remember, it's never too late to reconnect with your soul's purpose and live a life of meaning. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show, or share it with someone who could use a little inspiration. It really helps the show reach more women and helps me keep the content ad-free. Join me next time as we continue to explore what it means to live with purpose in midlife.